you're thinking about buying a condo, great. How is buying a condo a little bit different than buying a regular house? Well, first and foremost, here in Albuquerque, we don't have a lot of condos, we don't have a lot of high rises, so most of our inventory is going to be single family homes, 1 to 2 stories. Rarely, every now and then we have a 3-story home. But condos, you're mostly going to find downtown where the nightlife is. It's mostly, for the most part, I want to say it's for younger individuals. Your space is a little bit more condensed. Typically, you're going to have HOAs, and they differ. The HOA might offer gated parking, gated community, pools, amenities, tennis courts, and because of what they offer, they charge different prices. And you have to be aware of when do they charge you. Is it per month or every 3 months? Typically, what I have seen helping people is they're gonna charge you every 3 months, even though they break it down as a monthly expense. So, condos, very cool. It's kind of like living in an apartment, but it's yours, you're buying it. Something interesting about condos, as the majority of us, of people, when buying a condo, we're going to use some type of financing if we're not buying cash. 2 things to keep in mind: there are restrictions for renting them out. Let's say you wanted to buy them and do Airbnb, short-term rentals. Some places will not allow that just because there's time restrictions. I believe off Montgomery and Carlisle, there's a community. They have a lot of condos there throughout that whole corridor, but I believe they want minimum stay of 6 months. Therefore, that makes it I wouldn't say short-term rental, but I would say that's more like a long-term rental unit. I don't know what happens if you rent it out by night and there's a lot of movement. I don't know what happens. I don't think they're gonna take that away from you. You might get a fine, you might get a penalty, you might get some attention called onto you. I just don't know what happens if you violate some of those rules. Just keep that in mind, that there are not deed restrictions, there are, what do you call it, HOA restrictions, I should say. Going back to financing, most of the condos, I don't know why, and maybe a lender can touch base on this, but most of the condos here in Albuquerque, I have noticed they're either cash, REC, or conventional. What? So one of the financing terms that we're leaving out is FHA, Federal Housing Authority. If you remember, Federal Housing Authority, it's money, it's a loan that you, the buyer, gets, but it comes from a different pocket. It comes from the government pocket, not independent people, right? Well, they have certain regulations that say, hey, look, this community of condos has to be on an approved list for FHA to actually lend on this specific community. I don't know why, but if I have to guess, and I've heard this throughout the years, that certain amount of properties in that community have to be owner occupied and not renters. I believe it's 50, it has to be more than 50% of the people living there have to own their actual condo. I don't know why. Maybe it has to go down to volatility. But whenever you're looking to buy a condo and you have an FHA loan, it might be very hard to actually secure that property because most of them are going to go with conventional financing. Just keep that in mind. I did have that. I have come to that situation a lot with buyers, typically in the lower price points, because the lower price points mean smaller units. It happens with new families, younger families, starting out, and what they can afford is condos. But next thing you know, they have FHA, and there's no inventory. That's just how it is.